and remembrance, not only to grieve, but to find wisdom and guidance in the legacy of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, his family, and his companions. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. This Soyam marks the third day following Ashura, a time when our hearts are still heavy with sorrow, but also ignited by the light of Imam Hussein's sacrifice. It is a day to reaffirm our commitment to the principles for which our Imam stood and sacrificed his life. Our program tonight will be led by the recitation of the Noble Quran by Brother Zaki Lakhani, and this will be followed by recitation of English poetry by Brother Muhammad Hussein. And once again, our final majlis tonight, inshallah, will be addressed by Hujjatul Islam, Sayyid Sulayman Hasan Abidi. I would like to share a few important community announcements. First and foremost, tonight, the Mehdi Youth Sisters are hosting a discussion event after the conclusion of the Urdu program upstairs, after Ziyarat. We will resume back down here. This is a sisters-only program targeted for age 14 and above. And this is a discussion with Hujjatul Islam, Sayyid Sulayman Hasan Abidi, on the topic of Echoes of Karbala, bringing its lessons to life. So if there are any sisters, you are welcome to stay after the program. Additionally, Beth will be hosting its 15th annual blood drive on Sunday, July 28th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Also, Beth Quran Academy registration is now open. The fall semester will begin August 15th, and these classes are held every Thursday and Friday from 6:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. For additional questions, please contact Sayyid Qazim Hussein. Also, the registration for the Beth Ilm Sunday School is also now open for ages 2 to 15. Links to the registration forms are available on our website under the Sunday School tab. And for more information on the Tarbiyah curriculum, please email the administration at sundayschool@baitulilm.org. Also, for the broader community, we will resume our Thursday night dua program starting next Thursday, July 25th. And also a reminder for the next upcoming weekend majlis will take place this Saturday and Sunday. It will begin with Salat al-Maghrib at 8:37, and then this will be followed by Majlis promptly at 9:05. At this time, we will begin our program with a recitation of Surah number 73, Surah Al-Muzammil. I would like to request Brother Zaki Lakhani to please come forward at this time. Let's welcome him with a loud salawat.
الرحيم يا أيها المزمل قم الليل إلا قليلا نصفه أو انقص منه قليلا أو زد عليه ورتل القرآن ترتيلا إنا سنلقي عليك قولا ثقيلا إن ناشية الليل هي أشد وطئا وأقوم قيلا إن لك في النهار سبحا طويلا واذكر اسم ربك وتبتل إليه تبتيلا رب المشرق والمغرب لا إله إلا هو فاتخذه وكيلا واصبر على ما يقولون واهجرهم هجرا جميلا وذرني والمكذبين أولي النعمة ومهلهم قليلا إن لدينا أنكالا وجحيما وطعاما ذا غصة وعذابا أليما يوم ترجف الأرض والجبال وكانت الجبال كثيبا مهيلا إنا أرسلنا إليكم رسولا شاهدا عليكم كما أرسلنا إلى فرعون رسولا فعصى فرعون الرسول فأخذناه أخذا وبيلا فكيف تتقون إن كفرتم يوما يجعل الولدان شيبا السماء منفطر به كان وعده مفعولا إن هذه تذكرة فمن شاء اتخذ إلى ربه سبيلا إن ربك يعلم أنك تقوم أدنى من ثلثي الليل ونصفه وثلثه وطائفة من الذين معك والله يقدر الليل والنهار علم أن لن تحصوه فتاب عليكم فاقرأوا ما تيسر من القرآن علم أن سيكون منكم مرضى وآخرون يضربون في الأرض يبتغون من فضل الله وآخرون يقاتلون في سبيل الله فاقرأوا ما تيسر منه وأقيموا الصلاة وآتوا الزكاة وأقرضوا الله قرضا حسنا وما تقدموا لأنفسكم من خير تجدوه عند الله هو خيرا وأعظم أجرا واستغفروا الله إن الله غفور رحيم صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوات
صل على صلوات صل على محمد وآل Muhammad. I would now like to request Brother Muhammad Hussein to please come forward for the recitation of English poetry. Let's welcome him with a loud salawat.
They can cut my arms and my legs. They can take everything that I have. I will come crawling to you, Hussein. I will come crawling to you, Hussein. Every day it cuts me inside. I'm so very far from your side. I would give away these eyes just to catch a glimpse of your shrine. If I have to cross the seas and every desert in between, I will come crawling to you, Hussein. I will come crawling to you, Hussein. I can tell you that I'm insane in the love of my master Hussein. In this universe there's no pain that can ever keep me away. Every inch that I come your way, every beat of my heart will say, I will come crawling to you, Hussein. I will come crawling to you, Hussein. On the plains of Karbala, when you said with a heart so scarred, Hal min nasirin yansurna, who can help me in times so hard? Falling from the cot to the floor, Ali Asghar gave this call, I will come crawling to you, Hussein. I will come crawling to you, Hussein. This is now my state, O Hussein. I am so overwhelmed with pain. Who can I turn to and explain all the grief that my heart now contains? Who can I now call for help, pinning all my hopes on yourself? I will come crawling to you, Hussein. I will come crawling to you, Hussein. They say when you breathe your last, you recall your entire past. When my life flashes past so fast, I pray that in my final gasp, death will be the sweetest taste. When I see your radiant face, I will come crawling to you, Hussein. I will come crawling to you, Hussein. They can cut my arms and my legs. They can take everything that I have. I will come crawling to you, Hussein. I will come crawling to you, Hussein. Salawat.
MashaAllah, Muhammad. That was a beautiful recitation. For his Sayyid and Salamti, let us all recite aloud. I would now like to recognize our generous sponsors for tonight's program. For the health, safety, and continued blessings. For the family of Brother Amir Beg, let us all recite aloud salawat. Salli ala Muhammad wa alihi Muhammad. The sponsoring family has requested that you remember the marhumin of your families as well as the marhumin of their families, in particular Murtaza Ali Beg, Sayyid Iqbal Ali, and all the remaining marhumin of their family. Please join me in reciting one Surah Fatiha, one time Surah Ikhlas, preceded by a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Salli ala Muhammad wa ali One final reminder, if you please wouldn't mind double checking your cell phones at this time to making sure that they are either on mute or on vibrate. And before I request Maulana to come forward, I did want to take a moment to express on behalf of myself and the entire Bethlehem community our utmost gratitude for everything Maulana has done for this community, not only during this Ashra, but for the years of service here at Baitul Ilm and elsewhere. Maulana, thank you for always being a source of guidance and knowledge for us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect you and your family with an abundance of health and safety. May He continue to give you the tawfiq in your ability to serve, and may He continue to bestow His mercy onto you. With that, let us all please stand and welcome Hujjatul Islam, Sayyid Sulayman Hasan Abidi, to please come to the minbar at this time.
Surah Al-Fatiha. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين، المبعوث رحمة للعالمين، شفيع المذنبين وحبيب قلوب الصادقين، سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين الهداة المهديين، ولعنة الله على أعدائهم إلى قيام يوم الدين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. أما بعد، فقد قال الله عز وجل في القرآن المجيد: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ألف لام ميم. أحسب الناس أن يتركوا أن يقولوا آمنا وهم لا يفتنون، ولقد فتنا الذين من قبلهم فليعلمن الله الذين صدقوا وليعلمن الكاذبين. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Over the nights of the first 10 days of Muharram, we have discussed that our life is a form of trial and a test, and this is something that we can prepare for in order to be successful in the trials that we will have in our life. One of the best ways that we can derive guidance and we can ensure our ability to pass the tests that Allah gives us is to draw a lesson from those who were tested in an earlier era, and in particular at the very beginning of the prophetic mission. When Prophet Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa alihi he introduced Islam, there were a number of different reactions. There were those people who were curious and attracted to the message of the Prophet, and there were those people who were repelled. Among those people who were attracted, there are some who began to calculate that what are the potential gains and the potential losses? Is it a good idea? Is it a gamble? Is it a risk? Some of them never ended up joining the Prophet. even if they may have had an admiration for the character of the Prophet and even for the message of the Prophet. Then there were others who joined, but they joined late, after other people had perspired and bled and suffered for the establishment of Islam. They came when it had already begun to triumph, and they joined and profited in a material sense, in a worldly sense, if not in a spiritual sense. Only Allah can judge the extent of their sincerity, and we are only able to look at the historical record. But then there were those who were attracted to the message of the Prophet, and they didn't worry about whether it would be of their material interest or not. They weren't concerned about whether Islam is going to spread like wildfire, or whether nobody is going to join this religion, or whether some people might join it but other people will not. Instead, they said that if this is the truth, if this is the message that Allah has revealed to us, and we are blessed to have heard about it and to have been the first to hear about it, then we should not hesitate. And there were certain character traits. We looked at the example of people like the Prophet's wife, Sayyidah Khadija, and the early companions like Ja'far al-Tayyar, like Abu Dhar al-Ghifari. And we saw that there were certain character traits, love of the truth. And sometimes we think of love of the truth like a scientific or an intellectual project, and that is just our curiosity, what we're interested in. But love of the truth means that we want to examine those things that are of benefit for us. It might not be the most glamorous or the most exciting thing, but if it is important and it pertains to the purpose of our life and the understanding of how we should live our life, then that is the truth that we should give the greatest importance to. Even before a person has any kind of guidance from revelation or wahi, they should have the guidance of their conscience and an upright character. The Quran is hudan lil muttaqeen. First, you have to have piety in order to be able to even comprehend and to be able to benefit from the Quran. You can read the Quran without piety and you might become a scholar of the Quran, and you might write articles and books about the understanding and the interpretation of different verses and the connection of verses to history, but you will not be guided by the Quran if you don't already have that state of taqwa. And on the other hand, you might not be an expert in Arabic, and you might not have access to the most accurate translations. But if you have piety, then even with the limits of your ignorance and maybe your connection to the original language of the Quran or the quality of translations that you have access to the extent of your knowledge and to the limitations of your ignorance, you will be able to derive benefit from the Quran. That's a common mistake we make in our time, because we confuse knowledge in the sense of facts with knowledge in the sense of a connection to a deeper truth or wisdom. So for example, if you love Imam Hussein and you devote your life to expressing your gratitude to Allah and your love for the Imam that Allah sent as a source of guidance and inspiration for you, but you may not have a great deal of knowledge of the details of his life, then other people might say And in this culture, you might yourself feel that, you know what, I don't really know that much. But another person who can talk for hours about early sources of biography and can write an article and can comment and criticize different stories that are narrated, well, this is only reported in that source, and so it's not that authentic, but this is more authentic, and I think it wasn't this year, it was that year, and maybe it wasn't like this, but it was like that. That person feels like I know a great deal. But that is not how you can tell whether you know Imam Hussein. You know Imam Hussein if you are connected to him and his mission. If remembering him brings tears to your eyes, then you know Imam Hussein even if you forget the date of his birth and the year of his death, and you don't know the details of his life. Now, if you have that connection, I don't want to say that those facts are not important. They are important, but their importance is only going to be there, the benefit is only going to be there if you have that initial connection. If you don't have that connection, then, as is described by ulama, there are curtains of darkness, but there are curtains of light. The curtains of light are still curtains. But because there is so much light, you think that you are in a good state, you are illuminated. To give a common example, let's say that I am steeped in sin. I'm arrogant, I gossip, I lie, I have a quick temper and I yell at people. So these are curtains shielding me from Allah, shielding me from the values and the teachings of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wa alihi and Ahlul Bayt. But they are curtains of darkness. This is darkness, this is evil. And it is a temptation of shaitan that he tries to keep me away from the straight path, from my own benefit and salvation. But what if I pray and I'm proud of my prayer? What if I fast and I think I am better than somebody who doesn't fast? What if I have knowledge and then I kind of mock somebody who, when they read Quran, they make basic mistakes? And I think that I am superior. Now, generally, that polished knowledge and practice, we don't think of that as a curtain, a veil shielding you from Allah. But it is a veil. It is a veil constructed of light, because those are beautiful things. To have knowledge of your religion is far better than not to have knowledge of your religion. To be able to recite the Quran beautifully and correctly is far better than not to be able to do so. But there are people whose memorization of the Quran, whose beautiful recitation of the Quran, whose knowledge of religion, whose prayers, whose charity, whose fast, whose hajj and umrah and ibadah are what make them arrogant and make them feel superior to others. And so that is a curtain constructed of light. And between the two, which is more tragic? In fact, the curtain constructed of light. Because, yes, there are people who do evil, and أَخَذَتْهُ الْعِزَّةُ بِالْإِثْمِ, they are proud of their sin. But the human conscience and society at least can recognize sin as sin. And when you enter into the company of believers, they will express, or you will feel, that they are not in favor of those bad attributes. But if I am guilty of one of those curtains of veil, then in many cases people will come and pray and praise and say that I hope my son or my daughter grows up to be like you, which is more insidious and more dangerous. In many cases, that curtain of illumination and light is more insidious, because even if you choose pious company, they might not be able to see that your intention is not pure. So they will see your ibadah, they will see your ilm, they will see your outward goodness, and they will hold you up as an example. They will admire you, and you might go further and further into the darkness of illumination. But both of them, in reality, they are the same. Whether I am veiled from Allah because of my lack of prayer, or I am veiled from Allah because of my arrogance in prayer, rather than الَّذِينَ هُمْ فِي صَلَاتِهِمْ خَاشِعُونَ. In both cases, I am veiled from Allah. And that is why you want to first develop the attribute of khushu', and then you want to go and you want to perfect your prayer. You want to make sure that you are first muttaqi, and then you want to go and study and learn the Quran. You want to first make sure that you have a connection to Imam Hussein on an emotional and on a visceral and on a spiritual level. And then you want to go and study the seerah and the biography and learn the facts of the life of Imam Hussein or any one of our ma'sumin. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Because that is what is going to sustain you. And when we await the advent of the Imam of our time, the promised one whom humanity awaits and whom the Muslims have been promised the advent of, and who the followers of Ahlul Bayt in particular are fervently praying for and awaiting, and that is Imam Mahdi alayhi salam. What is the most important thing that is going to connect me to Imam Mahdi and ensure that I will recognize him and I will follow him? He's not bringing a new sharia or a new religion or a new revelation, because it is his job to complete and to perfect and to bring to a culmination the sharia and the law and the revelation and the promise given to our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wa alihi. But it is those same attributes that we discussed in the preceding nights that are going to be the greatest guarantee that we will understand and recognize and be able to follow our Imam when he comes, which ensured that those who were in the time of the Prophet followed the Prophet. It was that inner taqwa and piety and that receptiveness to God's grace. Sometimes people think, and especially younger members of our community, it becomes popular sometimes to say, did you know this hadith is predicting that there's going to be a war in this part of the world, and there's going to be political instability, and these are the signs just before Qiyamah, or the signs just before the advent of the Mahdi. And because many of those ahadith and many of those signs are shared in the various schools of thought of Islam, and it is a matter of, I cannot say absolute consensus, but virtual consensus among Shi'i and Sunni Muslims. So that kind of enthusiasm, you will find it in different schools of thought of Islam. But this is a proof that the Mahdi is about to come. And we have 10 signs that we're looking for, 3 of them are done, this is the 4th, and now we have X number left. That is not how you are going to determine whether the event of the Mahdi is imminent or not. In fact, you cannot know. And the main purpose of those signs is for us to remember the promise of Allah and to see the way that Allah governs the affairs of the world. but not for us to be able to predict when and where and how through those ahadith. If I want to spend my time and my energy, let me spend my time and my energy not on what predictions there are and how many of them have taken place, and how can we understand this prediction in one hadith in light of modern technology or modern political developments, but rather spend my time and my energy in connecting to the message of Ahlul Bayt, in carrying out and living the message of Ahlul Bayt to the best of my ability, because it is a mistake if I think that when Imam Mahdi comes and makes his call, then all of a sudden I am going to close up shop, I'll stop sitting around all day and playing games, and all of a sudden I'm going to become pious. What I will do when the call comes is most likely going to be what I am doing right now. In fact, we have a number of ahadith from Ahlul Bayt. When people would come and say that, I want to know what Allah thinks of me. Or they would come and they would say to the Imam that I want to know where I stand in your heart. And in reality, those are the same question. If I say, where do I stand in relationship to Allah? Ma manzilati inda Allah? That is not a different question, and ma manzilati inda al-imam is a different question. Your manzila, or your station in the eyes of Allah, is your station in the eyes of the imam, because the imam is the representative of Allah, the executive that Allah has placed in this world to establish the law and the religion of Allah. So both of those are the same question, and that's why they have the same answer. If I want to know where I stand in the eyes of Allah, or where I stand in the eyes of the Imam, then the best way to do that is not with external circumstances. Sometimes people think that, you know what, whenever I wish something, it comes true. I'm blessed. I have the Midas touch. Right? Not the curse, but the blessing, before the person finds out that it's a curse. That's not a sign. In fact, according to numerous ahadith, some of which we have discussed before, in some cases, when you have all your prayers answered and all your wishes granted and nothing bad ever happens to you, but you kind of escape without any difficulties, that is a sign to be worried. Because it's possible that that is istidraj, and Allah gradually weaning you away from desperation and seeking His blessing. According to a hadith, Allah knows that you are not calling upon Him with devotion and with sincerity, and so He prefers that you don't do dua at all. And so Allah gives you what you were going to ask for before you pray. Why? Because He doesn't want to hear your voice. And Allah doesn't want to hear your voice. He doesn't dislike to hear my voice because of a prejudice. He is our Creator. But when He knows that I will call on Him only for my own benefit and not to develop a relationship with Allah, then that is not a dua, and that is not something that Allah desires. So we sometimes think that إِذَا أَكْرَمَهُ وَنَعَّمَهُ, when Allah gives us luxury and gives us outward honor, Rabbi akraman. What a wonderful gift I have been given by God. I'm special. That same mistake is sometimes made by people of other religions as well. And it's made by some Muslims. And then there are others who when Allah tests them, فَقَدَرَ عَلَيْهِ رِزْقَهُ, but then constricts their sustenance, materially, in terms of wealth, in terms of popularity and influence, and you think the whole world is against you. Many of us will say, Rabbi ahanan. Oh, now Allah has turned His back on me. And sometimes people, they lose their motivation to do ibadah. I've been praying to Allah for something, and I didn't get into that school. That marriage proposal didn't work out. I feel discouraged. And now I used to do recommended prayers. Now I kind of feel like, well, what's the point? I'm not getting what I want anyway. Rabbi ahana. Allah has done an unkindness to me and dishonored me, and so, God forbid, some people go one step further, and not only do they stop doing what is recommended, but they may even lose their motivation to do what is wajib. My prayers are not being answered, so why pray at all? Why wake up for Fajr? Why do my obligatory prayers? That's not a sign of God's favor or unfavor. Because in both cases, whether it is akramahu wa na'amahu or qadara alayhi rizqa, in both cases, إِذَا مَبْتَلَاهُ, they are not different, they are the same. They are both ibtila and tests. I think that one is lucky and the other is misfortune. But in reality, I don't know whether poverty is better for me or wealth. All I know is that God tests some people in this way and some people in that way. And all people He tests, sometimes with wealth and sometimes with poverty, sometimes with sickness and sometimes with health. But both of them are a test. And we should not flee from the tests of Allah. It is narrated in Amali of Shaykh al-Tusi and also in Nahj al-Balagha that Imam Ali alayhi salatu was salam, sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad, he heard somebody say, A'udhu billahi min al-fitna. I seek God's refuge from fitna, from tribulation, from trial by fire, from difficult tests. Many of us, when we read أَحَسِبَ النَّاسُ أَن يُتْرَكُوا وَأَن يَقُولُوا آمَنَّا وَهُمْ لَا يُفْتَنُونَ, might say, oh Allah, I really don't want that, thank you. I'm really conflict avoidant. I'm non-confrontational. I don't want the difficulty. But when Imam Ali heard that person say, أَعُوذُ بِاللَّهِ مِنَ الْفِتْنَةِ, he said, أَرَاكَ تَتَعَوَّذُ مِنْ أَمْوَالِكَ وَأَوْلَادِكَ. Are you seeking refuge from your wealth and from your family? Because the Quran says, إِنَّمَا أَمْوَالُكُمْ وَأَوْلَادُكُمْ فِتْنَةً. Your wealth and your children are fitna. So don't seek refuge in Allah from fitna. Now, does that mean a person who doesn't have a great deal of wealth is lucky? Or a person who doesn't have children is lucky? Sometimes, as parents, we may have difficult tests, whether it be the health of our children, or their future, or their faith. And in this society in particular, the sacred opportunity to have a family and to pass on a legacy of faith is not valued as it should be valued in Islam and in human fitrah and in our God-given nature. It's up to you, it's your choice. If you want to have kids, have kids. If you don't want to have kids, don't have kids. Everybody's choice is respected. In Islam, whether I want to or I don't want to, I am encouraged that go and make a prayer to Allah and an effort to create a family and to pass on to the coming generation your values and your faith. And that is perhaps one of the greatest investments that any of us can make in our salvation, because it is what extends our life. And if somebody doesn't have children, then you can still do that. with the children of your brothers and your sisters and your community, because it is not your genetics that need to be passed on. It is not your last name that needs to be passed on, but rather a legacy that you create of goodness, and whether that can be waladun salihun yad'u lah, a noble offspring that prays for you, or whether it can be ilmun yuntafa'u bih, knowledge that benefits others, or sadaqatun jariyah, a good deed that you establish, a donation that you give that continues to give benefit, that gives you a form of immortality, because you will die. And then your good deeds will come to an end. But if you can have children who continue to do good deeds, and then they have children and they continue to do good deeds and worship Allah, then it's as if you're not dead. Because your good deeds will continue so long as that legacy you created exists. So we should strive for it, not because I always wanted to have kids, but because that is one of the greatest investments I can make in my salvation. And if that is not in the cards, or God forbid, if I was given children but Allah took them away and I was not able to see them establish a family and continue, or Allah didn't give me children at all, or subjected me to a different test, then hope is not lost, and in fact nothing is lost. Because then there are other ways that I can seek to find and to create that legacy. So the person with money is not unfortunate. In fact, they have been given a great opportunity to create a legacy that will last beyond their time. A person with children is not burdened, but rather they are fortunate to have that opportunity to create a legacy that will last beyond them. So what does إِنَّمَا أَمْوَالُكُمْ وَأَوْلَادُكُمْ فِتْنَةٌ mean? It means that recognize that your money and your children are not an end in and of themselves, but rather they are a gift from Allah, and the test is from Allah. And therefore, you should not be worried about what happens in the end, but rather simply how you deal with that opportunity or that test that has been given to you. Sometimes parents are very worried about the faith or the actions of their children. And sometimes they are so worried, they become so strict and so unpleasant that the children actually, they kind of feel a little bit of a distance from their parents. But if we have faith in Allah, and our worries and our insecurities, we express them with Allah. And then when we deal with our children, we deal, yes, with a very profound sense of obligation. We don't take it lightly and say, well, they have their own life. When they're 18, they can choose to do whatever they want. But not the stress that the outcome is our responsibility. Because the outcome is not our responsibility. The responsibility that we have is to provide guidance and provide a foundation for faith. That is what we are responsible for, and that is what we are tested on. And then the outcome, that is not in our hands. There were people who were raised in Banu Umayyah, and they become Abu Handala. And there were people who were raised in the family of the Prophet, and they may not have been loyal to the message of the Prophet, even the prophets of Allah. And even our Imams, they had members of their own family and children that they were not followers of the guidance that those prophets brought or that our Imams brought. The outcome is not your responsibility. So you should not have stress, but rather you should feel an obligation, and you should do your best to fulfill that obligation. And so when Imam Ali said to the person that أَرَاكَ تَتَعَوَّذُ مِنْ أَمْوَالِكَ وَمِنْ أَوْلَادِكَ, what he meant to say is that your prayer is not formulated in the proper manner. The spirit is not the wrong spirit. You should seek refuge in Allah, but not from tests. And what did Imam Ali teach the person to pray? أعوذ بالله من مضلات الفتن. From those tests which lead to my becoming misguided and deviating from the straight path. It is not the test I flee from. Because if I am lacking in confidence, then there is a business opportunity when I can increase my wealth and maybe do a lot more good for Islam, and I will recoil from it and say that no, I don't want to do that. I'm afraid. I have an opportunity to have a family, and I will say, who knows what's going to happen? What kind of a world am I bringing them into? And I will recoil from that. We won't rise to the challenge and take advantage of the opportunities given to us, but rather we will back off from those challenges and from those opportunities. But the proper framework of a believer is not to say, أعوذ بالله من الفتنة, and instead to say, أعوذ بالله من مضلات الفتن. Tests are part of life. But oh Allah, when you give us tests such that you guide us in succeeding and in fulfilling our obligation so that we can triumph and we can achieve salvation through those trials and tests that you give us. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. And what that means is that in the life of a believer, there is a constancy and a tranquility that remains. We do not become euphorious when good things happen, excited that we are on top of the world, and then hopeless when bad things happen. As Allah says, I believe in Surah Yunus, ألا إن أولياء الله لا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون. Those who are near to Allah, and as we find in ahadith, that refers to Muhammad wa ali Muhammad alayhim as-salatu was-salam, and the lovers of Muhammad wa ali Muhammad alayhim as-salam, those are awliyaullah. What are the two attributes the Quran mentions? La khawfun alayhim, they have no fear for the future. Wala hum yahzanun, and they have no worries or no grief over the past. Now, on one level, that is referring to the state of a believer on the Day of Judgment. That on the Day of Judgment, Allah will give them reassurance that you will be forgiven and you will achieve salvation. You will go to paradise. So they don't have khawf, because Allah will give them good tidings that you have succeeded in the test. And they will not have regret, because they will not have wasted the chance that Allah gave them in this life in order to earn reward in the hereafter. But it is not only the hereafter. That state of awliyaullah is not just about akhirah, but it is also about dunya. La khawfun alayhim wa la hum yahzanun is another way of expressing the itmi'nan that the heart of a believer has, where the Quran says, Ala bi dhikrillahi tatma'innul qulub. Through the remembrance of Allah, the heart attains tranquility. So what does it mean in this world? الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَكَانُوا يَتَّقُونَ. The awliya of Allah, they are the ones who have faith and they used to act with piety and fear of Allah. لَهُمُ الْبُشْرَى فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ. They will have good tidings in this world and in the hereafter. The good tidings in the hereafter are explained in a hadith to refer to the good tidings that will happen at the moment of death. Because in the hereafter, you are already in the hereafter. But the time when you need good tidings for the hereafter are just when you are about to depart this world and you are going to enter into the unknown of the hereafter. Allah will tell you that, be assured, I give you the good news that you will achieve salvation, that you will have the honor of being served from the Hawd of Kawthar, the water of Kawthar, by our Prophet on the Day of Judgment. And you will have the company of Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad in the hereafter. And what is the bushra fi dunya? لهم البشرى في الحياة الدنيا وفي الآخرة. The akhirah is the good news about when you are going to enter into the hereafter, that you are going to achieve salvation. Allah will give that good news to awliyaullah, those who are the near ones of Allah, those who have a love and an attachment to Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad alayhimus salatu wassalam. And their attributes are الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَكَانُوا يَتَّقُونَ. They had iman and they lived a life of piety. So it is explained for us what are the attributes that bring us to that wilayah and that connection to Allah. The tidings in this world are a reminder that our faith is not just about salvation in the hereafter. The teachings of our faith are not only about what brings salvation in the hereafter, but they are also meant to bring a culmination to human society in this world. So that bushra fil hayati dunya is the glad tidings that the believers have of the appearance of Imam Mahdi alayhi salam. And the success of his mission to defeat a'da'ullah and to bring honor to awliyaullah. So there is good tidings in the hereafter that you will achieve salvation. But there is also a reminder that it is also for this world and the perfection of our life in this world as individuals and as a society and for all of humanity that our religion of Islam has come. And so when we want to prepare and ready ourselves for Imam Mahdi, let us remember two things. One is that our individual piety is our greatest connection to our Prophet and our Imams and to the Imam of our time. So we often find that there are people who come in Muharram and then they disappear from their community and from their masjid until the next Muharram. And sometimes people are a little bit more pious, maybe for Eid, if Eid is on a weekend. But otherwise, it is occasional. Our connection to Ahlul Bayt is really going to be visible not based on where we were on Ashura and where we were in the first 10 days, but where we go from here on out. Because if Karbala had ended in Ashura, then you and I would not have known about it. The greater sacrifice and struggle, even than those who were martyred in Karbala, was by those who survived Karbala. The struggle of Sayyida Zainab, the struggle of Imam Zainul Abidin, to carry the message of Karbala, salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. to keep it alive, to make sure that history did not record it as Yazid wanted and as Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad wanted. A rebellion against the government. Maybe a group wanted power, maybe a group wanted money, and so they rebelled. The reason why you and I know of Karbala and we continue to be blessed by the remembrance of Karbala is because of the way that the survivors of Karbala kept alive that memory every day of their life, with every breath, with every majlis, with every tear. And so my connection to Imam Hussein is not going to be best determined by whether I attended the procession or the majlis on Ashura or on the first 10 nights. That is very important. Because of course that memory, that remembrance, that commemoration is of those 10 nights. But it is how you carry it and how you live it after that determines what level of connection you had on those 10 nights and on the day of Ashura. And that is in every test that we have in our life. Some of us, we have practice, we have ibadah in an outward sense, but sometimes we lose the spirit. And so we have to return our attention to the spirit of our good deeds. Not just that I wear hijab, but do I have modesty in my heart and in my gaze and in my words and in my thought? Not just that I pray, but do I truly believe that my rizq and all that I need in my life, it comes to me not from my own effort and not from my own intelligence and not from who I know and what I do, but from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That will bring me khushu' in my prayer. So if I am praying, then let me establish that khushu' and know that whatever I ask for and whatever I need and whatever I want, it is not going to come from anyone but Allah. And so answering His call is the most important thing in my life. That my outward worship is only a shell if it is not animated by my inner modesty, my respect for the laws of Islam and for the values that those laws were legislated to reaffirm in our lives. So one avenue is our individual piety. And the second avenue is our sense of collective responsibility. And this is what I want to conclude with. What is the difference between somebody who believes in imamat and somebody who does not believe in imamat? If our imam is in occultation, then I don't have access to the infallible guidance of the imam, and a person who doesn't believe in imamat doesn't have access to the infallible guidance of the imam. I am awaiting, and they are awaiting. And some people will sometimes minimize the difference and say that all Muslims believe in the Mahdi, the Shia believe the Mahdi is born and will return, and those who are not Shia, they believe the Mahdi will be born at some time and he will appear. It doesn't seem like it's that different. But the key difference is, which question do we consider more important? For our salvation, for the purity of our religious identity, and for the continuity of our religious identity. Which of these two questions is more important? What is the actual law that I perform? Or what is my understanding of Islamic law and Islamic doctrine and the preservation of Islam? If I think the more important question is, what is the fatwa, the ruling that I perform? then I might be fooled into thinking there's not that much difference. Because if I believe in an Imam Ma'soom, I don't have access to him, so I go to somebody who is going to issue their best derivation of Islamic law. And if I don't believe in an Imam Ma'soom, I'm still going to go to somebody who's going to give me their best understanding. Now, the person who believes in Imamat will have better sources and better methods. And so maybe their fatwa is better. But in the end, it is not 100% infallible, and the other person is not 100% fallible. If my primary concern is what do I need to do in the moment, then I might be fooled into thinking that the difference is just minimal. They're not the same. Because to have an unqualified doctor is not the same as having a qualified doctor. If you don't have somebody with the perfect cure, you at least want a qualified, accredited doctor and not an unqualified quack. But in the end, neither one can cure an incurable disease. Neither one has a perfect answer. And even a qualified, accredited doctor can sometimes make a mistake, and even a quack can sometimes give you something that is beneficial, perhaps. But the reality is that the more important question for the integrity of faith is not what answer do you choose. That's important, but it is secondary. More important than the answer you have is the source of guidance that you believe in. Your faith that Islam is meant to connect you to Allah and the salvation of humanity as individuals and as a collective only comes from divine guidance. That is the key reason why Allah sent prophet after prophet. And every prophet introduced their successor, whether the successor, the wasi, was another prophet or a successor of a prophet. And that is why our final prophet, Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa alih, also introduced an imam as a successor who was not a prophet, but was continuing that infallible guidance. The key question that is the most important question for the integrity and the preservation of Islam is not exactly how am I supposed to do wudu. That's important. Get a good doctor and not somebody unqualified. The most important question is not what is the exact time to pray Maghrib. Is it right at sunset or 15 minutes or 20 minutes after sunset? That's an important question. Get a qualified authority to give you an answer. But that is not what is going to save humanity. Let's say everybody starts doing wudu the proper way that Ahlul Bayt taught. And the way the Quran says. They stop washing their heads and washing their feet and do what the Quran actually says. Now, all of a sudden, Gaza will be saved? Right? That's the key question that we needed. And let's say every fatwa, they do it right. They pray Maghrib at the right time. They do Siyam in the right way, Hajj in the right way, Umrah in the right way. They pay the zakat in the proper. Everything is solved. What's going to happen? Our fiqh will be correct. Our ibadat will be right. But the big questions of humanity will still not be solved. Oppression will still exist. Evil will still exist. Misguidance will still exist. And so which is the more important question? I don't want to undermine the importance of fiqh. That is very important. Do it right. Go to a qualified authority. But don't ever fool yourself into thinking that the real question we have is what is the ruling, what is the fatwa, what is the proper tafsir of this verse, what is the proper way to understand this historical or this legal or this theological question. All of those are important as ways for us to obey and to honor and to understand our religion. But the key teaching of religion is a connection to Allah through the Prophet and through those infallible successors of the Prophet who answer all questions and finally bring an end to the evil and the darkness that we find in society. So number one, take your personal piety as your responsibility and a take-home message from these majalis. And if you ever wonder how you're doing, then see, where does Imam Mahdi figure in your heart? Where does Allah figure in your heart? That is where you figure in the eyes of Allah and the Imam. And we can test ourselves at every moment, at every decision, at every test, at every temptation, and every day in our lives. And inshallah, that love and that connection will increase. That was the message that Ahlul Bayt preserved. And that preservation began immediately after the martyrdom of the martyrs of Karbala. Right after the call came out from the heavens, Allah qad qutil al-Husayn, the grandson of the Prophet, has been martyred. As the angels mourned and the heavenly company mourned the martyrdom of Imam Hussein, as our Prophet mourned the massacre of his grandson and his family in tents that had been burned, a small group of widows and orphans also mourned. The day of Ashura passed. With what tragedies it passed. Maybe as Lady Zainab looked from that hill known as Talla Zainabiyah, she would have imagined that the very thought that somebody would come and raise a sword above the head of Imam Hussein and martyr her brother in front of her eyes is the greatest tragedy that could befall humanity. But imagine if she heard that Umar ibn Sa'ad gave a command that Ibn Ziyad has ordered me that as soon as Imam Hussein is martyred, his body is to be trampled. And according to narrations, yes, there were 72 who were martyred with Imam Hussein, but every one of them had a tribe, a family member, somebody who said that yes, we fought them because they were rebels against Yazid, but we will not bear to see the indignity and the cruelty of their body being trampled. So even those martyrs who died with Imam Hussein and sacrificed for Imam Hussein, their bodies were saved that final tragedy of being trampled. One by one, families, clans, relatives came and they took those bodies and removed them from the battlefield. And then it is said that it was only the body of Imam Hussein, and there was no one there to say that the family of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is more important than my family, and the grandson of the Prophet shall not bear that indignity of having his body trampled. The body of the Imam was trampled. The head of the Imam was severed and raised on a spear, and even the clothes of the Imam were taken away from his person on the 11th day of Muharram, when the captives were finally tied in chains and ropes and taken towards Kufa. Ibn Sa'ad gave the command that the captives must pass from in front of where the martyrs' bodies laid as a final act of cruelty, so they will see that their beloved ones have not been buried and their bodies lay on the sands of Karbala. And as they passed the bodies of the martyrs, it is said that Lady Zainab, she saw the body of Imam Hussein and she turned towards the heavens, she turned towards Allah, and then she turned her face towards Medina and she said, "Wa Muhammadah, oh my grandfather, oh the Prophet of Allah, how can I tell you what I am seeing in front of my eyes? My hands and my feet are tied and I am not able to perform the final funeral rites of my brother. But what can I tell you? Sallallahu alayka malikus sama. May Allah send His salutations upon upon you, هَذَا حُسَيْنٌ بِالْعَرَى. This is my brother Hussein. This is that same Hussein whom you used to hold in your arms and hug and kiss and caress. Who whenever you saw him, your eyes would fill with joy. Oh my grandfather, هَذَا حُسَيْنٌ مُرَمَّلٌ بِالدِّمَاءِ. He is shrouded in his own blood and covered in the sands of Karbala, مُقَطَّعُ الْأَعْضَاءِ, with his limbs cut and separated from his body. مَسْلُوبُ الْعِمَامَةِ وَالرِّدَاءِ. And even his turban and even his clothes have been taken from him. This was the tragedy that Ahlul Bayt witnessed, and the memory of which they kept alive after Karbala. May Allah always keep that love and that memory alive in our hearts and in our lives. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us never to separate ourselves from the values and from the character and from the teachings of Ahlul Bayt. May that become the legacy that we pass on in our families and in our community, and that we convey to all humanity. May Allah allow us to witness the appearance and the triumph of the message of Imam Mahdi within our lifetimes. May we be his sources of support, and may Allah grant us the intercession and the company of Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad in the hereafter. Sallu ala Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad.